Welcome to the Online Success Journey Podcast, your opportunity to discover and learn from entrepreneurs like yourself. This is not your typical podcast, but a place where you can get the real story and find out how real people encounter speed bumps and detours, but journey through to find success. Now here's your host for the Online Success Journey Podcast, Patience.
Hello everyone and welcome to Online Success Journey. This is episode 204. Are you ready to join the clan? Today we have Sean Webb, author, speaker, and podcaster. Probably knows the human mind as well as anyone can, and his talent at helping others to get the most from their mind. His books have helped top executives become better leaders, US and Navy SEAL, sharpen their minds beyond the most elite training levels previously available, and readers self-cure their lifelong substance addictions. Although his work includes logically modeling human emotions for the world of artificial emotional intelligence, his deep passion lies in helping individuals supercharge their minds and lives with their knowledge of how their mind actually works so they can manipulate their mind's output levels. Hello, Sean.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. I know the clan is anxious to hear your story, so let's get started with the basics. Can you tell my clan a little bit about your background, about what you did before you started your own business?
Yeah, I came up in the world of supercomputing long ago in a galaxy far, far away, it seems. It's been such a long time since I've had a regular 9-to-5 day job. Yeah, I basically went to college after some military service and found myself being hired before I was even graduating college by a large supercomputing company, one of the leading supercomputing companies in the world, and I became an engineer for those guys. And then after that, they started to notice how I was really good with customers, and they would start sending me out as an engineer without the sales guys, and I would start closing sales without the sales guys even needing to be there. And one time I closed a $750,000 sale of a supercomputer in about 20 minutes, and the sales guy got a $100,000 commission check, and I was being paid, the regular $40,000, $50,000 a year or whatever the engineers get. And I thought, well, this sucks. So I went ahead and made the transition from engineering into sales, and from that point forward, became a President's Club sales rep for a number of high-tech companies over the next 8 years, and then graduated into executive management in marketing in a large Fortune Global 100. And after a few years of that, of seeing the Global 100 hire me as a change agent, but not wanting to change anything and not wanting to innovate anything, I had to break out of that. And during that, I had accumulated a lot of, financial success and personal success, professional success. I had a good name in the industry, and I had all these trappings of success of, big house and cars and boats and motorcycles and all the fun stuff a young male in America is supposed to have, good relationships and whatnot. And I thought I had put together the great story of all the things that I needed to attain happiness, because I'd grown up kind of poor. And so one of the things that I'd been focusing on was, okay, I got to use my mind. I got to use my abilities to try to make as much money as possible. And that's supposed to get me all the things that deliver happiness. And what I found out was that it is exactly the opposite is true. The more money you make, based on the focus on money, the more it is that you feel the emptiness that is there if you're not actually targeting your true fulfillment. And so I had to take a step back, and I said, okay, what is it that I missed along the way that I didn't put into my bag of tricks that could deliver me happiness? Because I'm here, I'm supposed to be happy with all this stuff and all this success and yada, 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 and I'm not. And so I started to do a lot of introspection and a lot of reading on, just everything, basically, an anthology of world religions. I thought, maybe I'm missing something in my spiritual space. And I started reading about the human mind, and I started reading about emotions, and I started to basically use the talents that I had built to become a great engineer, salesperson, understanding of technology to say, okay, how does this whole happiness thing work? And from that point, I kind of figured out the thing that I was missing. I had this major epiphany that showed me a lot of the stuff that I had been missing. And it showed me the core sources of my unhappiness and how the unhappiness came to be in my mind. And so I kind of put that model together for myself just to explain my own stuff to me. And then I started talking about it to other people. And their feedback was, well, holy cow, that's kind of how my stuff works also. That's kind of how my mind works, and how my mind is creating my negativity and my limiting thoughts and beliefs and stuff like that. And so I started to talk to these world-leading experts and say, hey, what is it that I'm missing? Because I can't be the guy who's figured this out for folks. Show me the book, tell me the researchers, show me the science that I've missed finding that it helps explain this stuff. And a couple of these world-leading experts are like, well, no one's actually figured this stuff out yet. And this stuff that you're showing me really makes sense, and you probably should start publishing it. Otherwise somebody else is going to start stealing it because they want to be the person who figures this out. And so you, Mr. non-accredited, non-PhD, non-specialized, out of the blue individual, may have been the person to help us figure out a large-scale model for explaining the human mind and how all this negativity and how all this stuff works, and especially the definitions of emotion and the modeling of emotions and things like that. And I thought, well, that's crazy. And I did a little bit more research just to make sure that these leading specialists were correct. And I mean, these were the persons who were up on stage at TED, speaking in front of thousands of world leaders and that type of thing, explaining their perspectives of how the human mind works. And I couldn't find anywhere that had the same type of knowledge that I had put together, the same type of modeling, the same type of understanding of the human mind. And so I said, well, crap, now I got to step back and take this seriously and maybe write a book about it, because the things that I was telling people were helping them figure out the problems in their lives. And then they were able to, as an individual, it's not like I was fixing them. They were able to then take control of their lives and change them to be what they wanted to be. And I thought, well, that's a cool thing. If I could do that maybe for the rest of my life, that would be amazing. And so I took a step back and I said, okay, well, let's see if we can write a book about this stuff to try to explain it to, the Walmart shoppers of the world, of which I am one, to explain it to folks who could then take it and change their lives to make their lives what they wanted it to be, and get all their limiting stuff out of the way, get all their negative emotions, negative reactivity out of the way, and unleash the ability of their mind that was been, buried underneath all of the regular life stuff that we thought previously that we simply had to accept, but we don't have to.
What a journey! What a background, Sean! Wow, that's mind-blowing. Okay, but
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. But Sean, why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because I love seeing people be empowered. And I love helping people, right? I mean, one of the things that I found out about happiness is, when you do things to try to make yourself happy, it's less and less effective over time. And that's actually a scientific foundation of reality in our human construct called hedonic adaptation. And it's a function of the nervous system, right? And the basic fundamental function of the nervous system is that it will report the differences in things. Like when you're looking at something, an object or whatever, the outline of the object is that it is different from something else that is in the background or the foreground or whatever it is. And so your eyesight will report to you the difference between things. And that's how you outline objects and the things in the world around you. And when things blend in, it's because they're the same. And so your nervous system won't see them because they're the same. And the same is true like the smell in the house. When you go on into the house and you smell that sensation of gas, right? And you know that the natural gas is leaking and it's not good for you. You get out of the house. Well, your nervous system isn't basically saying, hey, there's a gas leak in the house. Your nervous system is saying, hey, there's a smell here that wasn't here a second ago. And so it's going to report the difference to you on what your previous breath was versus your next breath. But after about 10 minutes of experiencing this stuff, your nervous system will stop reporting the difference because the gas leak can remain high and you won't smell it anymore. And so we get used to smells. We get used to touches. We get used to things that we see all the time. And so our nervous system doesn't report those things. And so, one of the things, obviously that we need to do there is take account of those things that are different. And I do what I do to help people. I really want people to live happier lives and be able to get past their negativity and get past, their limiting beliefs, their limiting thoughts. What I discovered about happiness is when you work for your own happiness, you run into this thing called hedonic adaptation. And so the hedonic adaptation is based on your nervous system stopping to report the differences in things. So when you get used to this smell in the house and it stops telling you that there's gas leak in the house and the gas leak winds up killing people, well, that's because your nervous system stops reporting the difference between things. Well, the same is true for happiness, and that brings it full circle. When you find something that makes you happy, like when you win the lottery or something, like the science of winning the lottery, the science is you're only happy for about a year based on the new money that you've got because of this new, life that you've been given and yada, yada, yada. But then you get used to it. You get used to the sensations. You get used to having more things. You get used to, and then all of a sudden you need more to be happy. But the reality of happiness is if you're working for other people's happiness, all of a sudden that's spreading joy in the world that then feeds back to you. And it's kind of beating the hedonic adaptation treadmill in that if you get something new, like a new car, a new boat, a new house, a new spouse, a new whatever, you're going to get used to that sensation. You're going to get used to that new variable. Then all of a sudden you're going to need something else to make you happy again. But if you're walking around the world and you're making other people happy on a regular basis, that feeds back into your happiness. And then when they then go on to create happiness from what you've done with them, that creates even more happiness for yourself. So you're beating the hedonic adaptation treadmill because you're seeing happiness feed back into your life on a constant basis. And it's always new based on something that you have spawned within this person and now they're creating. And the people that they touch are now creating the happiness for them and for other people, et cetera. And it becomes so life fulfilling. It's amazing. And so a lot of times we're focused on happiness to, go out and get the next thing or go out and start the next business or go out and get the next gadget or whatever it is. And all of a sudden we're surprised when a short time later, we're not made happy by that thing anymore. And the reality is happiness comes from within, and it comes from a place of creation, of co-creation, of happiness with other people. So if you can find that spot, that's the spot I would suggest you go to.
Let's put man aside. How do you know you are successful in your new venture?
I know I'm successful because of the feedback that I get from other people. The stories that I hear back from the people who have read my books and have basically changed their lives. I mean, there was this one lady who called me and said, "You literally saved my life." And I was blown away. I was like, "Oh my God, what are you talking about?" And so she actually came to see me and took me to lunch and explained the whole story about how her life had been filled with addiction to a substance, alcohol, and she couldn't get control of it. And to the point that she would drink all day, every day, and finally found herself in the neuroscience ward or the traumatic brain injury ward of a neuroscience hospital where she had drunk so much that she had brain damage and she couldn't tie her shoes sober. She couldn't walk without stumbling sober and, went into a coma for a couple of weeks. She was one drink away from not surviving the ambulance ride, the doctors told her, and then had to go through rehab for a couple of months after that to, get her life back under control, learn how to tie her shoes again, learn how to walk, etc. And she goes, "The day that my husband took me home, he's unpacking the bags in the driveway from the hospital, and I'm inside pouring myself a glass of wine to take the edge off." She goes, "I understand how gripping addiction can be for individuals." And this is a successful, wealthy lady who, had most of her life in control besides the drinking. And so she said, "But then I read your book, Mind Hacking Happiness, and I figured out I was able to get into my own mind and understand how it worked, and then took control of the things that were causing me to drink. I figured out the pain." And she goes, "I discovered something about addiction. It's not the substance that makes you want to drink. It's the pain underneath the substance that you want to numb or that you want to distance yourself from or you want to forget." And she goes, "I got inside of my mind. I figured out what that pain was and I fixed the pain and now I no longer need to drink." And so she said, I was the poster child for alcoholism in the United States. And understand this book isn't about addiction at all. It doesn't even mention addiction. She goes, I was the person who, couldn't control anything regarding the substance. And I got in and I changed how my mind worked based on exactly what you said in the book and changed my life with it. And then I hear other stories about, these, I do a podcast now with 2 Navy SEALs, and these Navy SEALs had come out of this special training. They have a lot of people have an understanding that Navy SEALs, the most elite warriors in the world, yada, yada, yada. They're the saviors that, they always swoop in wherever the problems are in the world to try to save the innocent people, et cetera. They have a a very stringent physical training regimen that everybody knows about. They're, some of the toughest guys physically in the world, but they also have a secret mind gym in Virginia where they go to train their mind, and they train their brainwave entrainment. They train their heart rate. They train fear control and switching from sympathetic response to parasympathetic response. And, they do a lot of science on the controlling their mind so that they can operate in these extreme conditions in a high efficiency. And a couple of these Navy SEALs got a hold of my book, and they're like, dude, this is the best mind training manual on the planet. We want to hang out. And so we've started going fishing together. We started hanging out. We've started a podcast together. These guys, live not too far from me, within an hour. And so we get together regularly to do a podcast now because, the feedback from these SEALs was, this is awesome, dude. You're doing some great work. And a lot of more people, like, one of my friends that I podcast with, Doug, he's like, I would give my left arm, literally giving my left arm, cutting it off my body so that we could teach this stuff in elementary schools, because we would have tons of less of school shootings, and we'd have tons of less of emotional intelligence issues, and yada, yada, yada. These guys are on board because they've already seen the best mind training that the U.S. government can provide anyway. And they say, this is better. So I'm like, okay, I know I'm successful because of those stories, unless these people are totally full of crap, the stories that I get back are the confirmation that I have to say, okay, keep going.
Wow. What have you learned from business as a whole?
I've learned that it's the people that matter the most. Making money is important. Creating a good product is important. Creating value for people is important. Having good foundation of business practices is important. But really, in the end, what are you doing but helping people, right? And so it's always important to keep the people in your focus in that, and it'll help your business. If you're focused on, making the money or doing the things that you need to do to get people to ring the bell or click the button or whatever it is, that's good, and you'll succeed from a business, machinery perspective. But if you want to make that process easier, focus on the people who are connected. Focus on your customers. Focus on the humanity and the service and the value you're delivering to your customers. And I do that to the point where I sometimes give my time away to folks who can't afford my time simply because they need it the most. And I know it'll come back to me in the end. I'm focused on the people first, though. And when you focus on the people, then you're doing the things in a right way that are going to help them in the end. And then they're going to want to give you their money. They're going to want to give you their time or their service or their contract or whatever it is that you're working toward. And the better you can understand their needs as a human being by understanding how their mind works, which is one of the benefits of the mind hacking happiness stuff, you're going to understand what to do easier. You're going to have that compass to say, okay, this is going to be the greatest value to my customers. This is going to be the greatest value to my partners that I'm working with. These are going to be the greatest value to my employee base or whatever it is. And you're going to understand them from the inside out. And that's going to help you serve everybody. And then it's going to help you serve yourself.
How do you increase your intelligence levels by sheer will alone?
Well, you got to do it through increasing your emotional intelligence. Multiple studies show that increasing emotional intelligence will increase how your mind works, which increases your general cognitive intelligence, your IQ. And the easy to understand explanation of how that works is that your emotional processing in your mind takes up the majority of your mind's cycles. And the 47% of your day that you're losing is something that is being driven by your emotional processing. And so when you can understand how your mind works from a fundamental characteristic point of view, you can take control of that processing. You can shut down a lot of that unnecessary emotional processing, and you can get back a lot of the cycles in your mind that help you think better, that help you solve problems better. Like, for instance, I don't know if you know, the limbic system is the source of a lot of our negativity. And the limbic system creates a lot of our negative emotions. It creates our fear response, our anger response, our sadness response. And when that limbic system is firing, the first thing it does is shut off your prefrontal cortex to kind of conserve energy. And that's your thinking brain, by the way. The front of your brain is your thinking brain. It's your executive brain. It's your brain that's going to solve your problems. Now, 150 years ago, this was great because when we were alarmed by something, when we were afraid of something, like a bear walking out of the woods or a wolf or whatever it was, a snake that we find, we don't need to think a lot to run, right? We need the energy for our legs to be able to get away from whatever threat it was, so that when we have that limbic system response, it shuts down our thinking brain. That's a great thing 150 years ago. Not so much anymore when we have spreadsheets now, when we have cubicles now, when we have business problems that we have to solve, etc. We need our thinking brain to get out of those problems. And so we need the ability to take control of our mind and shut some of that stuff off to be able to gain access to our thinking brain again. And and release those cycles that we're wasting on the regular mundane emotional processing that's going on, that's controlling a lot of our inner doubter, our negative voice inside of our head. It's wasting our time, or having a minor reaction to whatever is in our Facebook feed or whatever pissed us off in the headlines or whatever it was. We need to be able to wipe that stuff clean, and that then unlocks the ability for our thinking brain to fire like it's on steroids. It's supercharged at that point, because plasticity, it means, a lot of people, I kind of equate it as what fires together, wires together, as a common statement of plasticity. But basically, your brain, it used to think your brain never changed. Your brain was, whatever brain we got was what we're stuck with for our lives. And, hope you get a good one. Come on, 7. Here we go. Let's roll the dice. Well, that's not true. Your brain changes, just like you could change your muscles if you go to the gym and you work on your body and you get thinner and bigger and, all this other stuff. And, you go outside to run, you become a better runner. You go outside to shoot a basketball or to play cricket or whatever it is. You become a better person at this. You play the piano, you do crossword puzzles, whatever. You get better. Your mind helps you get better at it. Well, that's a function of neuroplasticity. Your brain changes in form and function based on how you use it. So over time, as you start to gain control of your mind and direct how it's working and start to increase its cognitive capabilities, that gets stronger over time, and you get smarter over time based on your ability to take control of your mind and clear it of the unnecessary processing.
Can you give us 2 tips how to start really getting our mind, strengthening our mind? Like as you said, when you go to the gym, you want to strengthen to lose weight or gain muscles. So what is the 3 main keys or points you can give someone who wants to start tomorrow or tonight?
Sure. First will be to pick up a book on meditation, and this would be just for anybody. If control of your mind and your attention center, and this is specifically taking into control your anterior cingulate cortex. Meditation is simply a way to focus your attention, and so when your attention is focused on something else, or when your mind's attention is being jerked away by the subconscious things that are wanting to distract you, like your negativity or like that doubting voice inside your head or whatever it is, or the reactions of Facebook, etc., the way that you control that en masse is to take control of your attention. And so one of the things that you can do as anybody across the globe, and now science is, of course, backing up, is that you can do a meditation practice. And it doesn't take a lot. Maybe 10 minutes a day will get you some amazing results. But the second one is the unique thing that I introduce in Mind Hacking Happiness, which is understanding how your mind works from a 50,000-foot view. Now, here's a number of things that can come about because you learn how your emotions work or how your reactivity works in your mind. The first thing is your meta-awareness shifts. And meta-awareness is basically just an awareness of your awareness, okay? So if you're understanding how your mind is working and you're seeing how your mind is working, one of the things that your subconscious mind then notices is, just like a tooth can't bite itself, a fingertip can't touch itself, an eyeball can't see itself, an olfactory nerve can't smell itself. There has to be some distance between an observer and an observed. And so when you're learning how your mind works, and Mind Hacking Happiness will lay it out for you. When you learn how that mind works, you learn how to see your mind. Now, the magic that happens at that moment is that your subconscious mind then says, wait a second. I thought I was that mess a second ago. I thought I was that anger. I thought I was that sadness. I thought I was that fear or frustration or worry or doubt or whatever it was, but I can see it. And if I can see it, that means there's a distance between the observer and the observed. So I am not my mind. I am the observer of my mind, which now gains a huge distance between you and the potential mess that could be going on, or you and the distraction that could be going on, or you and the inefficiencies that could be going on in your mind. Now you realize you aren't that mind. And if you aren't that mind, now as the executor, you know that you can take control of that mind and change it. Now, the second thing that happens has absolutely nothing to do with, anything that you do. It's a subconscious process in the mind itself. When you put an emotional process to a cognitive process, like when you put an understanding to an emotional reaction that you have in your mind that could be distracting you, that could be making you feel fearful or angry or taking you off path of being a good entrepreneur, whatever it is, limiting you in some way. When you put a cognitive understanding to that process, there's a magic button in your brain that turns that process off. It's like a sneeze. You can't even stop it from happening. After a sneeze starts, maybe you find a tickle in your nose and you can rub your nose and stop the sneeze. But at the point that the sneeze actually starts, there's no way you're going to stop it. Your body's going to sneeze. Just like this, when you put an understanding to an emotional process, that turns that process off. Now, Matt Lieberman in 2007 discovered this in UCLA. They did a bunch of copycat studies that confirmed this. And they put a group of people in an fMRI and they said, okay, look at this group of pictures. And it was a bunch of pictures of people sad, happy, fearful, reacting to whatever. And they looked at the brain while these people were just looking at these pictures. And the brain did what they expected it to do, which, because of our mirror neurons, it started firing in the same regions of the reactions that they were witnessing in the pictures. So the person was looking at a fearful response, and the fear receptors in their brain started firing a little bit, and they could see that in the fMRI. Now, the second run through, they said, okay, now look at these same pictures, but we want you to name the emotion in play. We would just name it. Just, think about it for a second. And so they went through and the individuals named the emotion that they saw. And what they saw in the brain was that the reactivity was starting to shut down in real time. And this has to do with like walking by a coil on the ground and you look down and you're like, oh my God, is that a snake or is that a hose? And at the moment that you realize that it's a hose, you have a cognitive response to your emotional processing. And your emotional center sends it forth to the forebrain. And the forebrain says, hey, everything's cool. It's just a hose. And so then it sends a message back to the limbic system to say, okay, we're good, shut down, don't send the fear anymore. You don't have to kick in the adrenaline, you don't have to start running, whatever it is. And so that's basically how this whole thing works. When you put a cognitive understanding to your emotional processing will shut down. So in the instance of mind hacking happiness, I explain the two variables, and they're really simple. Two variables in your brain that say that are balanced against each other to create every emotion that you have. Fear, anger, sadness, worry, doubt, regret, whatever it is. Then there are variations in the variables that create our complex emotions, but basically they're just two variables. Well, when you learn to look at those two variables, that's putting that cognitive process to your emotional reaction, and you can literally turn off your fear at will. You can literally turn off your anger at will, or decide to use your anger. If you think anger is a productive emotion in this momentary reaction that you're having, and you can use that anger to motivate yourself or whatever it is, you then are moving from compulsion to choice. You have the ability, the freedom to say, okay, rather than be controlled by this emotion, I'm going to control this emotion. And so that's one of the things that you can do, is to learn how your mind works. And at the point that you learn how your mind works, I don't know if you've ever seen like a FedEx logo, so you see the FedEx logo and you see in the negative space between the capital E and the lower case X, you see there's an arrow there. And you see that arrow in marketing class when they point it out to you, and they're like, oh, aren't these, graphic designers geniuses for putting this arrow in this FedEx logo that makes you think that they're taking your package somewhere in a really quick fashion? Well, after you see that arrow in that negative space between the capital E and the lower letter X, you can't unsee it ever again. Every time you look at that logo, you're going to be like, oh, there it is, the arrow. The same thing is true about understanding how your mind works. When you understand the two variables that come together to create each and every one of your emotions, you can never unsee that. And so it's going to be a tool that you'll have for the rest of your life, and it'll be effective for you for the rest of your life, because that's what pushes the magic button to turn that stuff off.
Okay, briefly tell us about the book, and how can we get this book, and who is this book for?
Okay, so you can get a copy of the Mind Hacking Happiness books from Amazon.com or from Audible. I read the book myself on Audible. I'm told I did a good job. You can find out more. I've got online courses and things like that, continuing education, both free and for pay at mindhackinghappiness.com. And I've got other links out to other stuff from there as well. And that can help you take, what you learn in the book to the next level to increase your mastery. Because, we start as an adult learning model, we start from an unconscious incompetence where we don't even know what we don't know, right? And so then you pick up a book and you go to unconscious incompetence where it's like, oh, okay, well, now at least I don't know how to do it, but now I know at least what I need to do. And then we move into a conscious competence, which is we learn how to do the things that we've picked up the book on, or we learn how to play tennis better, or we learn how to shoot basketballs better, or whatever. Well, that's what this website helps you do, is to increase your conscious competence in being able to take control of your mind, et cetera, until you reach that unconscious competence, which is just lights out. You don't even have to think about it. It's just, your negativity automatically gets shunted out of your way before it even comes to full fruition, and your life is amazing in all aspects because you can take your mistakes in business and throw them out the window immediately and keep moving forward. You can take the unfortunate incidents in your life and get by them quickly so that they don't drag you down and weigh you down as an anchor for, a decade or more as you process through them. You don't have to be limited in that fashion.
What type of clientele do you work with?
Well, I work with executives in businesses. I work with, a number of people who want to take control of their mind and life. Anybody who reaches out, is a prospective client for me. I'll speak at a lot of science conferences. And so I've been doing a little bit of work with the folks who are generating artificial consciousness, believe it or not, in that I've figured out emotions for the individual. But it also turns out that I figured out a great model of creating emotions for artificial personalities, such as artificial intelligence and things like that. So I've been kind of working with some of the scientists on the cutting edge of creating emotions for C3PO type of thing, to where, we'll have our digital assistants will be emotionally intelligent. They'll be sensitive to our emotional needs. They'll also be able to create simulated emotional responses to make them seem more human. It's like 34% of us like to name our cars, and they have absolutely no personality. So who knows where this can go.
Thank you. So, Clan, there will be more from Sean in a moment. If you are listening on one of the many podcasting platforms rather than my website and you are encouraged by Sean's journey, go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for a bonus portion of the interview. The Online Success Journey is a wonderful membership community built for people searching for the path to success. We are one big clan and you can be part of this community for free. Once you have joined the clan, click on part 2 of Sean's journey or over 150 other journeys that are available, and learn how you can find the right path for your own online success journey. That's a wrap, clan. Remember, success is a journey. Patience and Sean.
This is not the end of the journey. We hope you've enjoyed listening to part 1 and want to be sure you know there is a second part to this and every journey podcast at onlinesuccessjourney.com, filled with even more success tips, uplifting stories, and even a bit of fun. There are dozens of episodes only available to the members of the Online Success Journey clan. Check out the website and click on Join the Clan for more information. Patience would like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and she has a free audio gift for you at her website. Go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for instant access to this gift. Of course, you know that listening to the journeys of others helps each of us chart our own path. So make sure you're subscribed to be notified as each new interview is posted. There are so many ways to stay connected to the Online Success Journey and to listen in. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we appreciate your help in telling others. One of the best ways to share the benefit you get is to rate and review it at Stitcher and other sites by clicking the stars or completing the ratings form, by clicking thumbs up and leaving a comment on YouTube, or liking and sharing the podcast on social media. To review the podcast within iTunes, simply open iTunes to the podcast, click on Ratings and Reviews, then write a review. On behalf of Patience, and until next time, thanks once more for listening. It is our hope that this podcast will guide you on your own online success journey.